trying to do a little bit of a stream here. Want to teach you guys a little bit about building out a PC. Obviously, Grievance, we're all PC gamers. But I think there's some people that have consoles, but I don't know of any of the things that are actually focused on console gaming. So it's all PCs. So we have to go through the periodic efforts and issues associated with that, repairing or replacing your PC. Kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how to go about finding parts, creating a build, building it yourself rather than pre-builts. When to get a pre-built, what pre-built companies to stay away from, or maybe migrate to, and talk about parts choices and frankly whatever else you guys come up with. Whatever questions you guys have. I've been doing this for myself for a lot of years. I used to run a PC repair shop and build shop for about 10 years, although that has been a while. So, but I do put in a lot of effort because it just interests me as far as keeping up to date with all the whatever the current stuff is. Hopefully I'm not also picking up from the microphone behind me or from the speaker behind me, which might be. There we go. Sorry about that. I'll fix this a little bit. So, any questions? Anything you got, Wendell?
Well, currently, I do have a couple messages. First off,
I have lost your audio, Wendell.
Is it me?
There we go.
Yeah, no, it's just me. All right, so actually, I have a couple statements real quick. First off, we are doing a game key giveaway for the stream. It's a Yakuza Kiwami. I'm hoping I'm spelling that right, because I hope I'm saying that right. But Yakuza Kiwami, we're going to be giving away a game key for that. And then you will see the video. There is a slight about 15-second delay on the video versus the voice, and it's just how we are getting the video across to get us both in it. So make sure to register for an opportunity to win that game code. But on top of that, Khanne, it is awesome to see you again. So I will probably have a few questions here, and you can, we'll figure it out. Let's see what happens.
All right. I went ahead and pulled up this Yakuza thing. Oh, what is this? Is this something I want? I don't know. Oh, it has to see how old I am. I don't know. Is this stream safe here, man?
Well, it's always set to mature, but it's still during the daytime. So let's. I'm not sure.
This is a game you're giving away, man. I didn't pick it.
I didn't pick it either, but I mean, I guess. Well, let's see what happens. Let's. we can switch.
We'll roll the dice here.
Woo, roll the dice.
All right. That's not too bad. I thought it was gonna have scantily clad ladies or something. It looks cool.
Now the real question is, does it come on Linux?
It doesn't matter as much anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I guess we should probably address that a little bit. I am kind of the resident Linux advocate here within Grievance, or at least I have been. I've run into a couple of people lately who actually use Linux as a gaming platform. Recently, in fact, a guy jumped into chat with me the other day. Oh, I'm blanking on his name. I apologize to you, sir. But Steam has put forth something called Proton, which doesn't entirely matter to you guys necessarily, other than there are now something in the neighborhood of 9,000 games, or maybe even 10 at this point, on Steam that run on Linux, including most AAA titles. The few games that don't are usually ones that are very specifically heavily loaded with DRM, and that's digital rights management for those who may or may not know. And those folks are less friendly to the Linux world, and even to Gabe and the folks behind Steam. So few exceptions, but 95% of it actually runs these days. It's incredible. Some games actually perform slightly better. Some games perform slightly worse than their Windows counterparts because you're actually doing some complex calculations in the background to make Windows things work on Linux. But it is almost ubiquitous now. So yeah, you can do it. I'm playing ESO every day on Linux. No problems.
And is it basically still using Wine, or is it something different now?
So Wine for Wendell knows, which is great. Is Wine is not an emulator, and basically what it is when you have a game, when you have a Windows program, it runs using an executable file and DLLs, dynamic link libraries, and those DLLs are a problem for Linux because they don't actually run there, and so is the executable. But Linux built a translation layer basically that says whenever this exe calls for something to happen, you do it using this. You do it using your Linux counterpart, and the same with the DLLs. So that's how Wine works. And then on top of that, a program came out called DXVK, and that's Directx-Vulcan Renderer. Vulcan is a lot like DirectX as far as it's a graphics renderer engine, and they built a translation layer between the DirectX calls that Windows games say, hey, give me, draw this ray of light, or draw this color, or do, make this object move, whatever it is. And translates that to a Vulcan call, and Vulcan is open source, so Linux can talk to it, and it just runs. So right now we can run almost anything: DirectX 9, DirectX 11, some DirectX 12. There's a few glitches here and there. Every now and again, you'll run into a bug. You can go to, you can Google search for Proton compatibility. Proton is actually the wrapper that Steam put around all this DXVK and Wine, and built it into Steam. So you don't have to mess with any of it. You just click install, and it runs. Tomb Raider. I played through Tomb Raider. Although actually, I think there was a native port on that. But yeah, I don't do a huge variety of games, and I tend to prefer things that have a native Linux port to things that are running through the Proton layer. But I've used tons of them. My Steam library is pretty big nowadays, and it all just works, man.
All right. Well, I guess we should probably get to the hardware. I know. For when we get to it, Liette does have a question. Her video card's annoying her, and she's looking for a recommendation. So when we do get to the video card portion, probably want to think about that as well.
All right, perfect. So there's as far as I know, and I'm going to switch over to the browser here for a second. As far as I know, the first thing you need to decide is if you're getting PC hardware, you're getting it to either fix something that's broken, or you're building out a new system, basically. If you've got, like Liette has, a video card that's dying or underperforming, maybe you're starting to run into games, that don't look as good as they do on your friends' machines that have been built more recently, and you want to upgrade. Easy to do Easier in Windows 10 than it has been for decades. I got to be honest. Easy in Linux, kind of always has been. Basically, you just have to. The one thing that generally is recommended, and I still recommend it, although you can kind of get away with it under Windows 10 without doing it, is you uninstall the driver for your video card first. You go into your add remove programs, wherever that is nowadays under Windows 10, and you find, if you've got an NVIDIA card, which is probably more likely for most of you than AMD, you go through and you remove the driver, shut down your machine, swap out the video cards, put in the new video card, and come back up and then install the actual driver for the video card. One caveat I will give, pro tip, whatever you want to call it, is don't use the CD that came in the box. They're almost always hideously out of date. Go to the website for whatever company, EVGA or Gigabyte or whoever it is that is the brand on your video card. Go to their website, look up the drivers, and download the most recent. You'll save yourself a lot of pain that way. The CDs also tend to install a lot of bloatware, particularly in Windows. That you don't need. It just slows your machine down. There's not a lot of use to a lot of it. So video cards. So let me pull up the browser here. We're going to go to browse products. We're going to look at video cards. Right now, there's a pretty fair amount of choice, more than there has been for a bunch of years. I would suggest you don't want something with less than 6 gigabytes if you're buying a new video card. The ones I would more generally recommend, it depends on your budget, honestly. Video cards are expensive. You can kind of see the pricing there on your right for some of these video cards. I think I have this. How do I have this sorted? I wonder if I can sort by most popular. I don't think I can. Try to pick a price point, amount of money you're willing to spend. Also, look at what video card you've got right now. So, Wendell, what video card does Liette have right now?
I don't know. Let's see if she will. I know she's listening, so let's see if she'll pop in with what video card she currently has. I know it's been a little bit since they built their system.
Okay.
So yeah, she's looking.
All right. The other thing you want to know is what resolution and what kind of monitor. How are you going to display this? What are you going to put it on? Right. Video cards have to work harder to display more pixels. The pixels are decided by, you hear about 4K TVs, 8K TVs, 8K monitors, 4K monitors, 1440p. Personally, I like 1440. I think it's a good balance. You can get like a nice 27-inch screen for $300-400 for a good one. That'll do a high refresh rate. That's another thing to look for in your monitors. Because it makes it easier. People, there's been a lot of, if you go to Linus Tech Tips, they did a lot of comparison videos on whether or not high refresh rates on your video monitor, on your gaming monitor, makes a difference, and they found that it really does in general. So 1440, 1080p. 1080p, pretty much any new video card that has come out within the last 4 or 5 years can do 1080p without too much trouble. There are some very inexpensive ones, under $100, that might struggle some. But pretty much anything over that should be fine. You can even get, I'm still running a 1060 that is probably getting on 6 or 7 years old now, and it's just fine at 1080.
It's well, that's that's what's funny is apparently she's running an old GTX 1060, which I mean,
Yep,
yes, it's old, but it's not super old compared to I think what I'm running. So
understood. So 1060, if you're still playing 1080, Leon, if you're still playing on a 1080p screen, probably a 24-inch screen, if you're using that, they tend to be 1080. Uh, then a newer card. If you really, really want a new card because you think it might be failing, let's look at a 16. Let's look for, say, a 1660 is probably the closest equivalent.
yeah,
So here, 315, that's a 1660 Ti. That's an EVGA, which is a particularly good brand. You're probably paying a few bucks premium for that. And you can get it in Newegg for, well, you could. It's out of stock. You got to pay $315 if you want to get it from Amazon. Frankly, probably a better bet at that right now would be the RTX, the AMD 5600 XT. A little bit faster performance, a little bit less money, and pretty popular. Now they had some driver problems early on. So let's get EVGA does not do NVIDIA card or AMD cards. So let's look at. Oh, who do we got? Zotac would be on the cheap end. Where's Gigabyte? There we go. So we're going to look at Gigabyte here. And let's look for a Radeon 5600 XT, 273. So a little bit cheaper. Same 6 gigabytes.
is that a gigabyte card generally?
The 5600 is, yeah, typically. And that's fine. That's more than enough for almost any game that's out now and most games that are going to come out soon. If you want to run at super high graphics, even like I say, 1080p, you'd be fine. 1440p would be a bit of a stretch for this card if you actually had a higher resolution monitor that could draw more lines. That's the difference between 1080p and 1440. Your screen is drawing more lines every clock cycle, which is fractions of a second. And if you were trying to do 4K, then yeah, you would want a stronger card than this. I don't know too many people who game at 4K. Some people do. The monitors are very expensive. You have to put in a lot of beefy hardware to deal with it. And maybe it's worth it, maybe it's not. That kind of depends on your personal tastes at that point. Another thing to look out for when you're doing the video card thing is a little bit of what games you're going to play. NVIDIA has some technology built into their 2000 series, their 20 series, their RTX series is what they call it. That does real-time ray tracing. That gives you some pretty spectacular effects. Huge processor hit on that video card to do it, though. So you kind of rebalance that whole what's good at 1440, what's good at 1080, what's good at 4K. But for the handful of games, and there's really only a handful, there's maybe 4 or 6 that I can think of off the top of my head. NVIDIA keeps swearing that more people are gonna start using it, and maybe they will. But right now, games are pretty darn good looking without it to me. But I've seen some of them. What is the one? Metro something that they said really did it right, took advantage of the RTX ray tracing. You can only get that with an NVIDIA card, with an RTX that is an RTX video card, not a GTX video card. So that's something to consider when you're doing that. Now, if you get a video card and you're looking to wake this thing up, install it, what you're looking for on your motherboard here is that slot. That is your PCIe slot. Some of them will have one, some of them will have two. Back this up. This one has two of them. You can kind of see the other one down here. And this is the top slot. Typically, you want to put it in the top slot. That's usually going to be where your video card is. Most motherboards, depending on the price, will operate this one at a faster speed than if it tries to operate both of them. There's something called PCIe by 16 or PCIe by 8. Probably most people don't need to get into that unless they're really pushing the limits of their build, in which case they probably know some of this already. For most people, you'll just use your top slot. One thing when taking your video card out that I've seen some people have problems with, this little latch here locks your video card into place when you've got it installed. And then, so people will try to pull it out and they won't unlock this thing and they'll damage the motherboard. So you want to be careful about that. I think I've got a card.
I just want to point out it doesn't help when they put when they make the card so big you can't get to that little slot, little tab.
Well, and that's legit. I've had to use pens, something non-conductive.
Yeah.
Make sure the unit is off when you're doing this. And I mean, preferably unplug the power from the back of it, just to be sure that there's no residual power running through the board. When you have your system plugged in, when you have your system plugged in, there is always power going to it, even if it isn't running at the time. It's something that they've been doing for 10, 15 years now. And then when you turn on the button, it brings everything out of a low power state and puts it and starts it running. So there is a little bit of electricity running through your board pretty much at all times, unless, like I say, you've actually unplugged it from the back. And even then, there's a little bit left. If you're doing something really crazy, you'll want to unplug it from the back, push the power button, hold that down for a few seconds to drain the electricity from the capacitors and stuff that are built into the motherboard. Pretty rare situations that you'll be in a situation you'll need to do something like that. But if you're having trouble resetting a BIOS or something along those lines, that might be something you need to do.
Plus, pull the Cmos battery.
Well, if you're getting that hard into it, you probably ought to know all this already. But yeah, Cmos batteries, I can switch back here. Cmos battery is over here. Oh, let me move the camera. There you go. Looks just like a regular watch battery. It is in fact a 2032, which is super, super, super common type of battery. And that's what keeps all of your BIOS settings stored in memory. Otherwise, eventually the electricity would drain out of that memory. That memory is stateless, so it would lose it. It would lose some of those settings. So okay, when your system comes up, if you've got a very old system and your system comes up and all the time the clock needs to be reset in the BIOS, then what's happening is your CMOS battery is dying. And often you'll find if you had, for whatever set of hardware you've got in there, you'll find that you have to reset a few things. It's a little better now with some of the UEFI BIOSes, but that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, we could certainly make this conversation go for several hours.
Excuse me. That's true. So I don't know. Does that help at all for Liette there as far as video cards? If you're trying to move up to a better monitor, like I say, a 1440p or something, then yes, I would recommend probably upping your video card. But beyond that, I think you're probably fine where you're sitting.
Yeah, 1060 is still a pretty decent card.
Yeah. Anything in the 10 series is probably fine. If you're in the 9 series, 4 gigs was a lot for the 9 series, and 4 gigs is becoming a minimum for video games. So for some of the newest, best AAA title things. So yeah, if you're in the 9 series, you might want Chirp actually from ESO from the guild that I'm part, or the group that I'm part of. She actually recently asked for a recommendation because she was unhappy with her video card. I recommended actually for her. I think we ended up going with a 2060 Super. She had a few dollars to spend and really wanted to have some beef in her machine again as far as video cards go. So she got a 2060 Super. She has an odd setup for display though, because she actually projects it through a projector onto a wall or a screen. And I was concerned that the projector was actually the bottleneck, not the video card, and it turns out that was kind of true. So she has a nice new video card that could drive a nice big monitor at 1440p, or maybe it'd be a stretch for 4K. I mean, it could do it, but maybe not at the highest refresh rate and settings. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's. I've looked at projectors before, and I think that's the biggest issue is the resolution and the refresh rate.
Right.
Those.
Right. It's a neat concept. I mean, she gets to kick back in her lounger. She still plays with the keyboard mouse, which is kind of cool. I'm assuming they're wireless on some sort of a lap board or something. That lets her play. But if you're playing, particularly if you're playing like single player games and you got your little Steam controller and you're kicking back in your lounger, that sounds like a lot of nice comfy gaming.
It does to me. Do we? So we're rolling in here. I got probably about 5 more minutes before I need to start setting up for the next one.
Okay.
So do we have any more questions for Khanne in the chat? Looks like Zynite is getting ready to rebuild his computer. He's running a 980 himself. Yeah, he's running a 980 GTX. But I mean, he doesn't have any questions. It looks like he's fairly familiar with it. He says he's fairly familiar with technology. He's an IT guy too. So
980 was a beast of a card in the day. So I imagine he's probably going with a 2080. As far as video cards going, AMD is competing in the mid-range, the 5600 and 5700 XT. Those are both very nice video cards, and they compete pretty nicely with the 1060, 1070s out there. Save you a few bucks. Or 2060, 2070 is kind of nice if you don't need the ray tracing. But for the high end, it's still all NVIDIA. I mean, if you really want to crank the most that you possibly can, it's still the 2080 Ti. If you've got $1,200 for a video card.
We just ordered a new design PC for work, and I think it came with a 2080 Ti, and I'm like, I wish I could. I wish I could do some other stuff with these things.
Well, you can, just maybe after hours.
So there was a question. Let's see. Airspace 2 is asking, what's your current favorite Linux distro?
Manjaro. Yeah, it's a rolling distro, which is nice. You don't have to wait for the next version to come out. It comes out with new packages on a very frequent, fairly fast basis. It's based on Arch Linux, and there's a lot of Arch fans out there. which is great, and the Arch repository is fantastic. But Manjaro plays it a little bit safer. They tend to delay things about a week or two off of. They tend to stagger about a week or two off of Arch, and they pre-compile some stuff where Arch compiles everything from scratch, sort of using some predefined packaging to do it. Their package tool builds everything, which is nice. Everything allows you to install just about anything. So you have just this huge repository of programs you can install. Also keeps you more current. I'm on kernel 5703, whereas even Ubuntu that just came out, I think they're on 5.4. So I've got features available to me that an Ubuntu user wouldn't have unless they went out and built their own kernel. Which probably meaningless to 80% of you, but
not a problem. Here's another one. S. Frogger in the chat there asks, on a multi-screen setup, can one be set for high FPS?
On a multi-screen setup, can one be set for FPS? Can you? Okay, so can you have your video card sync to two separate refresh rates based on the monitor? I've never tried. I don't know this for a fact, but I would think you would be able to if you had G-Sync or FreeSync. I would think that they would be able to sync up with the monitor to what the monitor could handle. And if you're running two different monitors, it should understand that and be able to deal with that. Now Linux has now. If you were talking Linux, then a little more difficult. Might still be possible. We do have some FreeSync support built into the NVIDIA driver, which I know sounds kind of weird because FreeSync is an AMD thing, but it's there. They won't open source G-Sync, which is just weird, but whatever. So I don't know if that would. That might work. I would expect it to work in Windows before it worked in Linux, just because Windows dedicates their own engineers to help out with that sort of thing.
Yeah. No, that'd be an interesting one. I think a lot. To put my 2 cents here, I think it'd probably also have a lot to do with how you're running your setup. If you're doing full screen, windowed, and a lot of other questions there.
Now, if you're talking FPS as far as your video game, usually you're just going to put that on your primary monitor, and I think it's just going to run them both as fast as they can, if that's what you're talking about.
All right. Let's see. Any more questions?
You want to do your giveaway?
Yeah, sure. We can. Yeah, we can do that. All right. So let's go ahead. It's gonna.
I mean, if you got questions, I'm more than willing to answer.
No, I thought I'd missed one when I was looking at the. I thought I missed one when I was looking at the chat.
Okay.
But it doesn't look like I have. Although I do have one curious question. At least myself. Oh, Zionite, what do you think of the new 3080 cooler that was leaked? I haven't even seen this one.
I don't know. It's. We'll have to see how it works. It's a little odd, to be perfectly honest. I don't really understand the reason they laid it out the way they did. And nobody that I've seen, at least the videos that I watched, the YouTubers, honestly, that I watch, I haven't seen anybody who's able to disassemble it to see how it's actually routing things. kind of suspicious about whether or not it actually is gonna change the thermodynamics of the thing by a lot. You still just got to get wind across the components that need cooling, right? Across the fins. Whether that's air drawn from one side of the case or the other side of the case. It seems like you'd have to have a little more room around the card the way that it's laid out for it to breathe. But we're a ways from knowing yet, I think.
All right, yeah, I'm just pulling it up now. All right, so we do have a winner, so let's go ahead and draw it. Spree 610.
Hey, winner, chicken dinner. Oh wait, no.
Spree 610 is a winner.
Yay, Spree! Did you say Spree?
Yes.
Okay. Wasn't sure if you said Spree or Spring, but I get it.
Yep. All right, so
very cool.
Let's see, Pad will be getting with you for that. And now it is time that we need to go ahead and hand off for Let's Shut Down, because I need to start getting ready for our interview at 6. Khanne, thank you so much for coming in with your information and discussing this with us.
Hey, not a problem, guys. If you ever have a question, go ahead and hit. Pretty conservative as far as a PC builder goes. I don't like overspending on parts that you really aren't going to see the benefit out of. I know there's a tendency among tech enthusiasts to always recommend the most outlandishly expensive thing in the world because they want to see it. But I'm generally not that type. So feel free to hit me up if you see me in Discord. I should notice eventually.
All right. Well, thank you. We're gonna go ahead and cut this here.
See you, Wendell.
See ya. See ya, everybody.